Hello everyone, this is Solaris290 and I'm here today to review chapter 548 of Kingdom. So from last week's chapter we had Shin and Gyorun in a fierce duel to the death. And while Shin was on the back foot initially, after being reminded of Orki's death and all that inspired within him, he gathered up the strength to fight with Gyorun on equal terms. And from that scene last chapter we begin, with Shin striking Gyorun with all of his might and force, enough to almost knock Gyorun off his horse, to which his soldiers are flabbergasted. The chapter, entitled Mid-Battle Tactics, formally starts, and Shin now is the one on the upper hand, furiously striking Gyorun from left to right, all the while being fueled with the rage and the emotion of Orki's death. With Orki's face in his thoughts, he strikes Gyorun again and again. And finally, Gyorun has had enough, and Gyorun now strikes back with equal force. And so Gyorun admits Shin is strong. He does indeed have the right to carry that glaive, and by extension, be somewhat living up to Orki's name. But Gyorun then explains that it's not simply a matter of martial prowess, but ultimately whether or not Shin has the slightest understanding of the strength of a man. Shin is confused, but Gyorun offers no more, as he sees this as the prelude to Shin's death overall. While the trash talking between Shin and Gyorun continues, we shift places to Ten. And Ten is still struggling somewhat with having to gather up and discriminate between the vital intel given all the reports she's getting as to the state of the Hi Shin Unit at the moment. But nonetheless, it's clear that the situation has at least stabilised and is somewhat more positive than it was before, where she was effectively in complete chaos. And while some of the men argue that they should send reinforcements to Shin, Ten argues that the best choice now is to simply entrust the duel to Shin only. Ultimately, what they need to prioritise now is Ensan's position, since his position and that battlefield was where the blaze was centred. Ten understands from Shin's instinctual predictions that is the crucial piece, the key to this entire battle, which if they lose, then the whole battlefield will spiral out of control, and Shin defeating Gyorun even might not mean that much within the bigger scheme of things. And so back to the battlefield itself, En, Galor, Shorsa, even the new recruits, along with Kanto, are all struggling. Ultimately, it simply devolved to an all-out melee purely based on strength versus strength, to which the experience of the Gyorun army puts them in favour. Out of the fray enters Kyoukai. And Kyoukai notes that they need some sort of stratagem, strategy to be followed before they ultimately get swallowed up. And Garo here is a bit bemused, or should I say exasperated, to hear that Kyoukai is considering the use of a strategy right in the middle of this bloody battlefield. But Kyoukai explains to him that ultimately they need to set up an anchor point, and that Garo and the others such as Ryusen, i.e. you could say they're the pillars of the Hi Shin Unit, are needed to redirect their enemies to the right side. Ultimately, what this is all leading up to, as Kyoukai explains, is trying to set up two blockades on the left and the right, and then funnel their enemies straight down the middle. Ultimately, after gathering up the rest of the foot soldiers, including Sugen, who's finally there, Kyoukai explains that ultimately what they're trying to create here is a bottleneck. And since I'm a 10 fan, I just have to put this in. The idea of a bottleneck was something that 10 had thought up before. In the circumstances of her first battle with the Hi Shin Unit, having just joined as its strategist, she was able to take a good look at the topography of the battlefield and very quickly analyse and evaluate that a bottleneck was the best strategy at the precise moment. But of course, Kyoukai has always been a natural for strategy and tactics. Ultimately, as I would put it, Kyoukai has had an inborn talent for this, while 10 is someone whose potential had to be tapped through rigorous training by the likes of Shohei-kun, and as such, 10's grasp on strategy and tactics is more orthodox and by the book, whereas Kyoukai is more so able to think up these stratagems on the fly. So it's not necessarily a question of who is better at strategy when directly comparing Kyoukai or 10, but ultimately at this moment, Kyokai's strategy is a good one, albeit one that might take time and effort to actually formulate within the midst of the battle itself. And of course, Kyokai's appearance with all her grace and finesse is enough to inspire the battered remnants of the Hi Shin Unit to rouse themselves and follow her orders. And while some of the veterans are a bit unsure about this strategy, they nonetheless offer their trust in Kyoukai. Because really it all comes down to whether or not they can save as much manpower as possible and whittle down Gyeon's forces, who ultimately do outnumber them, not just in experience but in numbers. As Shosa tells Kyoukai, having her there is worth 100 men. But Kyoukai needs to put in one last word to inspire her troops to their limit. That ultimately together they shall fight, and together they shall grasp victory today. And with that the chapter ends. So this was again a chapter that went by fairly fast, but I thought it was a good split. The chapter was a trifecta, focusing on Shin at the start, then briefly giving us 10's position, with the bulk of it going to Kyoukai, and ultimately I do like that Kyoukai is going to have the lion's share of the fighting within the next few chapters. She's been there in the background, but finally she's getting her time to shine. Whether or not we get to see Kyoukai doing her dance and ton ton tan decapitating some unruly enemies will have to be wait to be seen. But this was a great chapter overall. But give me your thoughts and comments below.